The lake was so still it looked photoshopped. Samantha Reed stood barefoot on the dock, cradling her first coffee of the day like it was a newborn, watching steam curl into the morning air. After 5 years of 60-hour weeks, double-booked calendars, and the kind of fake smile politicking that makes buttocks look subtle, she was finally alone. No Slack notifications, no quarterly awkers, no Greg from compliance asking if she could hop on a quick call. Just her, the water, and a bag of kettle chips she'd eaten for dinner last night with zero shame. And then her phone buzzed. She didn't check it right away, she'd made a vow. 1 week, no corporate leashes, but something about the second buzz felt formal. She opened her inbox and there it was, a calendar invite titled Urgent Staffing Update, Zoom link below. No context. No sender name, just people ops notifications. Like a robotic pigeon crapped on her serenity. Her stomach dropped like it had a meeting with the lake bed. Now, Samantha wasn't born yesterday. She'd sat in on enough terminations to recognize the scent of digital bloodshed. And honey, when HR schedules a same-day Zoom while you're technically still on PTO, it's not to congratulate you on your outstanding Slack etiquette. No, this was a guillotine in a Google invite. She muttered son of a bitch, and for the first time in 3 days, flipped her phone off airplane mode. 4 texts came through instantly, 2 from coworkers nervously wondering if she'd heard anything yet, and 1 from her direct report, Martin, that just said, "Hey, heads up, something's up. Don't trust the smiles today." Smiles, there wouldn't be any. Not in that room, not on that screen. Now listen, before we keep going, let me just say, if you're the kind of person who gets this far into a story and thinks, I'll just listen to one more and bounce, don't. I'm one of the 97% who never asked for much. But if you're even half invested in this mess, hit the subscribe button and help me hit my first 10,000. You're here already, might as well support a petty queen on her way to vengeance. Anyway, Samantha looked back at the lake, half hoping a moose would trample the router and save her from whatever polite execution was waiting on the other side of that link. No dice. The universe wanted her present for this firing. She put on a hoodie, tied her curls into a warrior bun, and walked back inside the cabin like she was going into battle. Which, spiritually, she was. The Wi-Fi in the cabin was so bad the Zoom call initially loaded as a blurry Renaissance painting. Her screen froze on someone mid-blink, like an HR Monet. When the image finally stabilized, she was greeted by 3 familiar faces. Tammy from HR, plastic smile, blinking too much. Her manager Curtis, whose face always looked like it was waiting for permission to exist. And someone from legal whose LinkedIn she vaguely remembered creeping once during a boring town hall. "Hi Samantha, thanks for joining. Hope you're enjoying some well-deserved time off," Tammy chirped like a squirrel on Xanax. Samantha leaned forward. "Sure, what's this about?" Curtis inhaled like he was about to recite a Shakespearean death monologue, but instead delivered the most flavorless eulogy for a career ever spoken. "Due to a strategic shift in organizational priorities and cost optimization measures, your position has been impacted. Effective immediately." That was it. No thank you. No let's discuss a transition plan. Just corporate throat-slitting by way of buzzword salad. Samantha didn't blink, didn't flinch. She trained herself not to cry in front of men who confused confidence with insubordination. She gave them her best dead-eyed nod, then subtly reached for her phone under the table. 1 text to 1 person. 2 Lana message, "They just fired me." As the HR mouthpieces kept flapping, Samantha stared out the window at the lake. It looked different now, less peaceful, more like a stage for something ancient and vengeful to rise from the depths. Like her. Her phone buzzed once. Lana had replied, "I'll handle it." That's when Samantha noticed something weird. A small sound far off in the background of the Zoom call, a Slack ping, then a panicked whisper from someone off camera. Wait, did Calix just cancel their contract? Samantha tilted her head slightly, just enough to show she'd heard it, but she said nothing. She just smiled. The kind of smile you wear when you know a storm's coming, and for once, you're the one holding the match. The screen stuttered like an old VHS tape mid-murder scene. Samantha could barely make out faces through the pixelated glitch parade, but she could hear them, God. She could hear every strained syllable like it was tattooed into her eardrums. "Samantha, we want to start by saying we appreciate your years of service," buffering, but given the shifting needs of the organization and ongoing budgetary constraints, buffering, your position has been identified as one impacted by strategic realignment. 3 pairs of dead eyes stared out at her through the screen like dolls in a haunted attic. Curtis looked like someone had slipped a thumbtack into his shoe and dared him to act normal. Tammy from HR was playing her greatest hits. The sympathy squint, the soft head tilt, the subtle "you're being murdered but it's not personal" tone. And the legal guy just sat there like he was waiting to get back to his Sudoku. Samantha didn't respond right away. Instead, she stared, not at them but through them, through their performative empathy and into the cold boardroom fluorescent void they crawled out of. Her heart pounded like a war drum in her ears, but her face stayed perfectly still. Calm, clinical, like a surgeon watching an amateur attempt their first incision and knowing they'd nicked the artery. "This is effective immediately." "Yes," she said flatly, her voice smoother than a courtroom lie. Tammy nodded like a bobblehead doll at a funeral. Yes, but we'll provide you with a severance package that includes, I've reviewed the policy. I'm aware. She reached for her phone again, just below camera frame. To Lana message, they just fired me. Her thumbs were steady, colder now. She could feel the humiliation calcifying into something quieter, sharper, like someone had taken her rage, freeze-dried it, carved it into a blade. On screen, Curtis leaned forward like he was about to offer the kind of half-hearted "I wish this was different" garbage that men like him used to wash their conscience. Instead, a tiny ping interrupted him. A Slack notification. Not hers, someone else's on their end. Curtis glanced off-screen. Legal dude's eyes twitched. Tammy stopped mid-sentence. Then a whisper. Muffled like someone forgot to mute. Wait, Calix Tech just pulled out. Effective immediately. Samantha blinked once. Curtis went pale. Legal guy turned to the side like he was trying to read something on another monitor. Tammy's face twitched at the corner like her buttocks had finally short-circuited. Is everything okay? Samantha asked innocently, tilting her head ever so slightly, like a cat watching a mouse realize it stepped into a trap. Curtis stammered, then quickly forced a smile that looked like it had been welded on. Just processing a few things internally. But this doesn't change anything. Your termination is still effective today. You'll receive documents via DocuSign shortly. Tammy nodded fast, too fast, like someone trying to outrun a tsunami. Great, Samantha said. Then I suppose we're done here. Tammy opened her mouth to say something else, probably a legal disclaimer or some well-rehearsed line about wishing her the best, but Samantha had already clicked leave meeting. The screen went black. She stared at the empty Zoom window for a beat, then closed her laptop with the same reverence you'd give a tomb. The lake outside was still there, quiet, unmoved, but Samantha wasn't the same woman who'd sipped coffee on that dock 40 minutes ago. Something in her had tilted off its axis. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She walked back outside barefoot, cracked open a Diet Coke like it was a beer, and watched a duck skim across the water like nothing had happened. But something enormous, and it had just begun. The moment Samantha read Lana's reply, "I'll handle it, you're not alone," something in her spine straightened, not defiance, not relief. It was older than both. It was the kind of ancestral calm that washes over you when you realize the bear isn't behind you anymore, it's behind them. Her thumb hovered over the phone, considering typing more. Lana didn't deal in words. Lana moved in them. They'd survived 2 years as roommates in college, 3 breakups, 1 shared sublet with a mold infestation, and a summer internship at a startup so toxic it might as well have been radioactive. Samantha knew exactly what that text meant. The wolves had already been loosed. Back in the Zoom call, still awkwardly active, though Samantha had muted her mic, corporate clowns continued their script like a cheap community theater performance. Curtis was reading boilerplate off a Google Doc, something about transitional resourcing and exit interviews, but something shifted mid-sentence. A flicker passed across his face. Then came the sound, that faint digital chirp, a Slack notification. Samantha watched as Curtis's eyes darted off-screen. The legal guy frowned at his phone. And then, barely audible, a voice, likely from an adjacent cubicle, whispered, Calix just pulled the plug?" Samantha's mute was still on, but she smiled. Not a grin, not a smirk, just a slow, satisfied curve of the lips, the kind that should have come with a warning label. Tammy tried to keep talking, bless her clueless heart. "So, Sam, if I can call you that, once you've reviewed the severance docu," another Slack ping. This one louder. Curtis's jaw tensed like he'd just swallowed a dry aspirin. He reached up, tugged at his collar like the Zoom window had suddenly gotten warmer. Sorry, can we pause for 1 sec?" he said, voice faltering like a man who just spotted his own obituary being written in real time. "I need to check something, just a moment." Samantha didn't move. She just stared, camera dead on, unblinking, watching the fear grow like mold behind their eyes. Legal tapped away on a second keyboard. Tammy bit the corner of her lip, finally cracking the permagrin. She leaned toward someone off-camera and whispered, "What does it mean, full cancellation?" Curtis turned back to the camera, pretending like nothing was wrong, but now his hands were shaking. He lifted a water bottle, missed his mouth slightly, and spilled a few drops on his shirt. "Sorry, bit of a hectic morning," he chuckled, the kind of laugh that sounds like someone's lying to the FBI. Samantha unmuted her mic. "Thank you for the update," she said, voice silkier than bourbon over ice. "You've made yourselves very clear." Then she clicked leave meeting. The silence that followed was biblical. She shut the laptop like a coffin lid and placed it gently on the cabin's old wooden table. Her pulse wasn't racing anymore. Her skin wasn't buzzing with shock. The dread had been replaced by something steady. A current beneath her ribcage, humming with slow, calculated energy. They didn't know it yet, but the axe hadn't just fallen on her. It had taken their legs out from under them, clean through the bone. Samantha stood, stretched like a cat after a long nap, and walked barefoot back outside. The sun had shifted, cutting shadows across the dock. She could see her reflection in the water now, clear, unblinking. She whispered to no one, "Let's begin," because this wasn't the end of anything. This was the prelude to a reckoning. By the time Samantha finished rinsing the coffee mug she'd abandoned during her corporate beheading, Lana's second message arrived like a final drumbeat before the war march. "Full cancellation. No renewal. They'll hear from my lawyers too." Just 10 words, but each one carried the precision of a sniper shot. Calix Tech wasn't just a client, it was the client. The golden goose, the whale, the reason their CEO bragged to investors like he'd invented synergy. Without that contract, the entire Q3 forecast didn't just dip, fell through the goddamn floor like it owed rent. Samantha stared at the message, not with glee, not even satisfaction, just confirmation. Lana didn't bluff, she didn't do half measures. They'd shared everything once, from ramen budgets to heartbreak to a co-authored thesis on institutional accountability. When Lana said they'd hear from her lawyers, Samantha knew there was already a Zoom room full of them preparing their bullet points. She booted her laptop again, not for vengeance. Not yet, first something older, something essential. She opened her resume, not to apply anywhere, not to update job sites or ping recruiters. She just needed to see it, to remember who the hell they'd just tried to erase with a single Zoom call. Director of Strategic Project Delivery, 7 years, $38M client portfolio, 0 late deliverables, built procurement standardization framework for cross-team compliance, instrumental in 3 consecutive years of ISO certification. Every bullet point read like an indictment against the idiots who thought gutting her would go unnoticed. She wasn't some middle manager with PowerPoint addiction, she was the spine of the whole damn operation, and they'd snapped her out of it like a Lego limb. Across the country, in a downtown high-rise that reeked of panic sweat and failed espresso, the company was spiraling. The coup. Man so oily his emails practically slithered. Fired off a Dearboard damage control memo, so frantic you could practically see the typos breathing. Due to an unfortunate timing issue coinciding with a planned staff reorganization, our relationship with Calix Tech has changed. We are exploring alternative partnership avenues and will update you all by COB. Translation? We shot ourselves in both feet, and now we're bleeding out in the lobby. Samantha didn't reply to anyone. Not the recruiter who'd already slid into her LinkedIn DMs. Not the analyst who texted WTF is happening like she wasn't the fuse to the bomb. Not even Martin, her sweet, overworked direct report, who was already whispering in corners like a man preparing for a career evacuation. Instead, she pulled up a folder on her desktop labeled Q2 Audit Backups. She hadn't touched it in months, not since legal told her to stay in her lane when she flagged repeated inconsistencies in vendor invoicing. She'd flagged it to Curtis, too, who smiled like a substitute teacher trying not to lose it, and shelved it with his usual let's circle back noncommittal BS. But Samantha, she didn't delete things, especially not red flags. She archived. She double-backed. She created paper trails when the trails started smelling like gasoline. Now she sat in the glow of her laptop, scrolling through export logs, spreadsheet snapshots, and PDF invoices from 3 contractors who had the same billing address but different LLC names. She hadn't known what she'd do with it back then. But now she had purpose. Because betrayal in Samantha's world didn't trigger tears, it triggered war plans. She opened a new folder and titled it Disassembly. Not revenge, not justice. That wasn't what this was. This was demolition. She wouldn't storm the gates. She'd take the load-bearing walls out one by one until the whole empire crumbled under its own bullshit. And when it did, no one would even hear her footsteps. It started with a spreadsheet. Doesn't it always? Samantha opened an old Excel file titled Vendor Flow Final 2. XLSX, because even in betrayal, there's always a final version that isn't. Stared at the rows of vendor data like an archaeologist decoding a lost civilization's tax fraud. Flashback to 6 months ago, she was buried in procurement hell, elbows deep in unpaid invoices, duplicate vendors, and enough rounding errors to make Enron blush. Curtis had asked her casually, of course, to help optimize workflows. Translation: patch a leaky boat while being screamed at for why it wasn't a yacht. She'd stayed late for weeks, poring through data, found ghost vendors billing them in neat monthly intervals for consultation hours that didn't align with any project timelines. 3 contractors all routed through the same P.O. box in Delaware. An internal ticket marked close without review when she flagged it in compliance. And when she brought it up, HR said she was overstepping. Legal said she lacked context. Curtis said they'd take it under advisement. Nothing changed, except that she stopped getting invited to strategy meetings. But she kept copies. She opened the encrypted folder on her external drive, the one she used for personal notes, backups, and the occasional nervous insurance file. Inside, scans of flagged invoices, email chains, and Slack exports saved as PDFs. A full year of breadcrumbs. If someone pulled the thread, the whole company sweater would unravel. She didn't feel righteous. She felt ready. Click. She created a new PowerPoint presentation, because if this bomb was going to explode, it was going to be polished. Slide 1. Procurement vulnerabilities unflagged risk index. Slide 2. Duplicate vendors shared billing patterns. Slide 3. Invoice audit logs vs. project deliverables discrepancy rate, 38% no embellishment. No guesswork. Just receipts, dates, and patterns. Kind of documentation that makes investors sweat and whistleblowers look like prophets. Simultaneously, she pulled up her second laptop, the one the company never knew about. The one she used to field messages from rival firms back when Calix was in its growth phase. Back then, she'd shut those firms down with polite corporate daggers. We appreciate the offer, but are fully committed to our current strategic partnerships. Not anymore. She sent 3 messages. short, deliberate, all to companies whose ethics once made her uncomfortable, but whose appetite for blood now made them useful. We should talk. I've reconsidered our alignment. Each reply came back within the hour. Absolutely, you're a high-value operator. Say when, tell us what you know. Samantha didn't respond right away. Let them stew. Let them wonder what she had, what she wanted, who she might bring with her. Because what she was building wasn't just a bomb. It was a bargaining chip, a detonator, and a golden ticket all rolled into one. She turned back to her first screen. Slide 4 now read, conflict of interest. CFO's brother equals preferred vendor. She remembered the moment she uncovered that one, a gut punch buried in a buried document. She'd flagged it. Nothing happened, of course. But now she could see the threads. The same brother who donated to the COO's little startup incubator. The same incubator that mysteriously received company funds as a tech pilot. The same pilot that produced exactly 0 products. They thought she hadn't noticed. They were wrong. Samantha saved the presentation and backed it up twice, once to the cloud, once to a flash drive shaped like a tiny sword. Because symbolism matters when you're burning kingdoms. She poured herself a glass of wine, not to relax, but to mark the moment. The world hadn't noticed yet. News hadn't broken. The lawsuits hadn't landed. The PR spin machine was still asleep, but the bomb was ticking, and she had just finished setting the fuse. The headline was pure corporate sewage. Company navigates strategic client restructuring after internal transition challenges. But it was the subtext that really curled Samantha's lip. Buried in the third paragraph, behind bland phrases like market fluctuation and realignment, was the line that shifted her blood from warm to razor cold. Following a period of internal leadership disengagement, the company continues to evolve its client portfolio in alignment with long-term strategic goals. Disengagement, that was the word they'd chosen, not departure, not transition, not even restructure. No, they went for the scalpel behind the smile. They painted her as the reason Calix left. She was the dead weight, the rogue element, the saboteur. Samantha didn't scream, she didn't pace, she didn't even finish the toast she'd just made. She simply took a screenshot of the article, opened a new email window, and sent it to Lana with the subject line, "Cute." Less than 5 minutes later, Lana replied, "We'll make sure their next release goes viral for different reasons. Short, surgical, chilling in its promise." Samantha cracked her knuckles and opened a blank Google Doc. At the top, typed 2 words in bold, "Timeline, Calix contract breakdown." Then she started typing. Not from memory, no, she had receipts, all of them. She pulled up old Slack logs, re-downloaded calendar invites, scrubbed project files. She had documentation going back 18 months. Emails where Curtis begged her to smooth things over with Calix, slide decks she built from scratch to salvage delivery timelines. Messages from Lana praising her conflict resolution, thanking her for keeping the account alive. She added timestamps, quoted exact lines, annotated project pivots. Not once did she editorialize. This wasn't a rant, it was a legal weapon wrapped in Google fonts. Every claim had a backup. Every date had a trail. Every lie they might spin had a counterpoint, locked, loaded, and ready to detonate. When she got to the part where Curtis ignored Calix's security audit recommendations, twice she paused, and she inserted the anonymized chat log. "Curtis, just get them to sign off, we'll fix it later." Samantha, they flagged this as a non-negotiable. "We can't deploy without it." Curtis, they always bluff. He'd been wrong. And now that single thread, ignored and buried in a Slack channel from last September, was about to become headline fuel. She saved the document in 3 places: her desktop, the encrypted drive, and a secure share folder she'd already granted Lana's legal team access to. Then she opened Canva. Not to design anything fancy, just enough polish to look like a leak, not a pitch. Something clean, digestible, and extremely dangerous if it hit the right inboxes. She titled it, "Mismanagement Timeline," the real story behind Calix's exit. She stared at the screen. At her own name, not once mentioned, but pulsing underneath every line like a war drum. Because they made their second mistake the same way they made the first. They assumed silence meant weakness. They assumed she was gone, that she wouldn't respond, that she'd crawl off into the woods and heal in private while they scraped together excuses. But Samantha wasn't healing. She was sharpening. The indignation that once buzzed inside her had calcified. It had turned into something colder, more precise. They thought she was finished when they hit send on that press release. They didn't realize they'd just painted a target on their own face. She closed the laptop, picked up her phone, and texted Lana 2 words. "Timestamp." The reply came instantly. "Monday, 9 a.m., let's ruin them." Samantha exhaled once, slow, quiet. The war had moved to the next phase. And this time it wouldn't be private. The email hit the boardroom like a thrown brick through stained glass, silent at first, then followed by the slow, sickening collapse of everything they thought was shatterproof. It arrived at 6:02 a.m. Monday. Subject line, "Internal risk assessment urgent and confidential." No sender name, no signature, no traceable metadata, just a link. The board chair opened it, probably thinking it was some cybersecurity spam or another complaint from that guy in IT who still wore Bluetooth earpieces. Instead, he found a 47-page dossier. Page 1, a concise summary of procurement anomalies and internal mismanagement, written in clean corporate language sharp enough to make an MBA weep. Page 2. Side-by-side invoice comparisons showing 3 vendors billing the same amounts for identical work, 2 of which had no completed deliverables on file. Falsified billing reports. Non-existent work logs. Page 3. The kicker, a detailed account of Calix's audit recommendations being suppressed. Annotated messages, screenshots, email chains. Every excuse Curtis ever muttered in meetings now printed, indexed, and bleeding under the highlighter of truth. By page 7, the chair had called an emergency meeting. By page 20, legal had called outside counsel. By page 33, 3 board members had texted their resignation letters before finishing their coffee. And by page 47, well, that's where the hammer really dropped. An anonymous timeline of Curtis's leadership, carefully plotted against the company's decline in deliverable stability and client satisfaction. No direct mention of Samantha, but the phrasing, the tone, the organization, anyone who'd worked with her for more than a week would recognize the fingerprints. It was like reading a symphony written in bullets. By 10 a.m., the stock price had dipped 7 points. By noon, Twitter had caught wind of the resignations. 2 reporters independently confirmed internal misconduct investigations were underway. One user posted a meme of the CEO photoshopped onto the Titanic. Caption should have kept the one steering. Inside the company, panic metastasized like mold. Slack channels lit up. Directors scheduled back-to-back strategy syncs. HR issued a tone-deaf "We are still committed to transparency" email, complete with a Canva graphic of hands in a circle. Meanwhile, Samantha sat at the cabin table in her flannel pajamas, sipping her 3rd coffee, watching the implosion unfold in real time on her secondary laptop. Not smiling, not gloating, calculating, because this wasn't revenge anymore. Not the kind you scream into your pillow or plot with shot glasses and bad advice. No, this was something purer, precise, domination. Samantha had moved past the initial adrenaline, past the humiliation, past even the righteous anger. She wasn't hunting these people. She was dismantling the very architecture they built. One floor at a time, quietly, efficiently, without leaving fingerprints. She opened a new tab and checked her anonymous email account, the one she'd used to send the report. Nothing flagged. VPN still solid. The legal trail scrubbed clean by someone on Lana's team who once taught digital forensics at MIT. She pulled up LinkedIn. Curtis's profile still said SVP. Strategic delivery. She refreshed. Open to work. Her eyebrow twitched, then her phone buzzed. Lana, they're bleeding out. 2 more clients asked for emergency meetings. You ready, Samantha? Always. She looked at the window. The lake outside rippled in a breeze. A duck glided past like it hadn't just witnessed a corporate decapitation. She closed her laptop, finished her coffee, and whispered, 3 down. The rest won't even hear it coming. The call came on Tuesday morning, just as the fog over the lake started lifting like a theater curtain. Samantha was nursing the same cup of coffee for the 3rd hour, the kind of morning that invited stillness, but her mind, as always, was 10 steps ahead. She was outlining phase Roman 3 when the number lit up her phone, a 212 area code she hadn't seen in years. She stared at it, curious but calm, then answered. Read, she said, voice flat but alert. A pause, then, damn, still cold as ever. I respect it. She recognized the voice immediately. Peter Vaughn, former colleague, former nemesis. Former almost something in another life before middle management turned flirtation into terse emails and double-blind CCs. Now, head of operations at Mosaic Partners, a boutique firm that used to circle her old company like a hungry shark, always a bit too scrappy, a bit too ethical, and a bit too small to win against the empire. Until now. I assume this isn't a wellness check, she said. Peter chuckled. No, I saw what happened. Calix's press team's been spinning like a goddamn centrifuge. The streets whispering fraud, you're not mentioned, but it reeks of you. I'd recognize the structure of that takedown anywhere. She said nothing. Let him feel the silence. Let him earn the ask. He cleared his throat. Look. I've got full partner discretion now. We're growing fast. We need brains, grit, someone who knows how to build without cutting corners. I can bring you in as a partner, title, equity, your own division. Samantha swirled the cold coffee in her mug. She'd expected offers. Recruiters had already left enough voicemails to fill a Spotify playlist. But this wasn't headhunting. This was timing. You sure your board's ready for me, she asked. I don't do safe. Peter exhaled a laugh. They're begging for a scalpel. Not a bandage, you're it. She leaned back in the creaky cabin chair, let the idea bloom behind her eyes. Not just a job, not a title. Power. Clean power seeded from scratch. She could build something real again, but this time without dead weight or cowardice in pastel blazers. I have one condition, she said, name it. We take every client they stole. The legacy ones, the quiet ones. The ones they lured in with steak dinners and then starved with broken contracts. We bring them home. Peter didn't even hesitate. Done, she smiled. Not the satisfaction of revenge, the engineering of it. I'll send you my terms in 48 hours, she said. Don't screw the formatting, I don't do Comic Sans equity agreements. God, I've missed this, Peter muttered. You'll have full autonomy, no babysitters. We'll go silent until you say launch. She ended the call. The gears in her mind were already turning. There was a list, an actual list. Every client her former company had siphoned away from competitors during their so-called acquisition spree. She'd seen the internal brag sheets. She knew their weak points: vendor distrust, delivery delays, passive-aggressive emails from junior account reps with too much Red Bull and too little oversight. Samantha opened her laptop and created a new folder, Target Client Strategic Reclaim. She pulled the old files, CRM exports, client rosters, timelines, the quiet graveyard of good business relationships slaughtered by short-term thinking and bloated egos. It wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was resurrection. She didn't need to kill the company. She was going to outgrow it, outmaneuver it, and steal its future. And when the press asked what happened, well, she'd just shrug and say, market correction. All that remained now was the final touch. The last bullet. And that bullet was already speeding down the barrel, set to hit on a random Wednesday at 9 a.m. She poured a fresh cup of coffee, eyes locked on the calendar. Tick, tick, tick. It happened at 9:03 a.m. on a Wednesday so painfully average that the CEO hadn't even bothered to shave. He was in the office early, tie crooked, nursing a hangover from the emergency dinner with two now skeptical investors. The company Slack was a digital minefield of half-truths and delay tactics. His assistant had quit the day before Via posted. And now this calendar invite, urgent client crisis location. Zoom private channel organizer, external counsel. He clicked without thinking, more annoyed than alarmed. Probably Calix again, or maybe another client trying to renegotiate their contract after the disruption. He clicked join. The screen opened to reveal Lana Patel, Calix CEO, best-dressed executioner in tech. She wasn't alone. A legal team flanked her like chess pieces. Center screen, front and center, sat a court reporter. Real-time captioning already underway. The CEO froze. What is this? Lana didn't even blink. This is your deposition, she said. We're suing for breach of trust, negligence, reputational damage, and attempted defamation. Our attorneys have advised we proceed today while your memory is still clear. He started to speak, to stammer. But then the emails started hitting. 3 of them. Client A, effective immediately, we are terminating our contract. Client B, we have accepted an offer from Mosaic Partners. Please consider this our final correspondence. Client C, given recent developments, we're reevaluating all partnerships. We expect no further contact. His inbox lit up like a Christmas tree on fire. He switched tabs to the company dashboard. The stock was already down 11% in pre-market. Analysts were tweeting words like unsalvageable and freefall. One thread simply read, death by calendar invite. Back on Zoom, the court reporter cleared her throat. Shall we begin? Lana didn't wait. She leaned forward, icy and surgical. Tell me again, in your own words, what led to Samantha Reed's termination. His mouth opened, then shut. He looked like he'd swallowed a wasp. Samantha's name hung in the air like a curse. But she wasn't on the call. She didn't need to be. Her fingerprints were in the room, smeared across every dotted line they once thought untouchable. 2 hours later, internal Slack leaked a message from the CFO. We need to restructure. Again. But there was no again left to restructure. The skeleton had been picked clean. 4 states away, Samantha sat on the porch of her lakeside cabin. The sun was bleeding gold over the treetops. Her phone buzzed once. Peter's update. We've onboarded 3. The 4th is asking about NDA terms. They're scared. I like it. She didn't reply. Not yet. She swirled the wine in her glass, dark and steady. Her laptop sat open beside her, ticker feed running in silence. The company stock dipped again, now 17% down. The CEO's face had appeared on a business blog under the headline, Hubris Meets Market Reality. She could have smiled, could have raised her glass and toasted the fall. But she didn't. Instead, she stared out over the lake, eyes calm, wind brushing through her curls. And with the kind of quiet that made gods nervous, she whispered, all I needed was a signal. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.